My name is Carlos Rodríguez López, and I am an assistant professor at the Department of Horticulture at CAFE. And I'm an assistant professor in plant microbiomes. And what we're seeing here is a collection of grapevines and a single plant of soybean. And this is part of my research on the implications of epigenetic mechanisms and plant adaptation to the environment. Not many people is familiar with the term epigenetics. It's a new field of science. And basically these are molecular mechanisms that regulate gene expression without affecting the underlying sequence of the genes that control, for example, plant development. This might be a little bit confusing, but if you think of a cell like an iPhone, for example, and this is an Apple iPhone, so let's stick with apples. So apples have 50,000 genes in each single cell. And this is a huge amount of information, and it's difficult to know, for the cells to know when to use those genes and how to use them. And this is where epigenetic mechanisms come in. So imagine that these genes were songs, and you wanted to use these songs. So Apple gives you iTunes. That is an interface that allows you to deal with 57,000 songs. You can create a playlist. You can put the volume up. You can change the song that is playing at the moment if that's not the right song for your spirit at the time. So this is what epigenetic mechanisms do. They act as an interface between the environment and the cell genes, and allow the cells know how to use those genes and when to use them. This is important because plants use those mechanisms to adapt to the environment. So if you're an animal, let's say a human, and you don't like the environment where you are, you can change, you can take your things and move away. Plants cannot do that. So they have developed very sophisticated mechanisms to adapt their expression of the genes to the environment where they grow. A good example of this is flowering time. We tend to think that plants flower during the spring because it's warm and nice, but the reality is that what really triggers flowering, and this is controlled through epigenetic mechanisms, is the experience of the winter. So why this is important? Flowers are very sensitive to cold weather. So if a plant produces a flower in the middle of the winter and it gets really cold, that flower will die and won't produce fruit. That's important for us too, because as I'm holding here some fruits, these are seeds from soybean that we use in our diet. So we need to, we and the plants need to control very well when they flower. They cannot flower too early. And it's through epigenetic mechanisms that they can count how many days they have been under winter conditions, and they know when winter is finished. So what tells a plant that they can flower is not that the spring is here, it's that the winter has finished. So another thing that plants do is respond to stress through epigenetic mechanisms. For example, in a previous research that we've done in my lab, we found that if you expose a plant to drought stress, the next time that you expose to it, it will respond better. And this is because they can remember through epigenetic mechanisms how to deal with that stress. What we think is that we can use that epigenetic memory of stress to improve our crops, to be more resilient to stress. But there is one problem. When we propagate plants, either through seeds or through cuttings like here, this is a grapevine plant that has been propagated through cuttings, it seems that they forget what they have experienced. So what we're studying at the moment is what are the molecular mechanisms regulating that loss of memory, so we can control it and avoid that loss, so we can create better crops in the future. Another thing that we're studying, and that we're really excited with this at the moment, is how plants interact with microbes in the soil. This is important because you cannot think of microbes, of plants, as individual species. The same that everybody tells you now, in every TV ad, they tell you your gut microbiome is really good for you. You have to take care of your gut microbiomes. Plants need to take care of their soil microbiome. Why? Because these microorganisms help plants taking nutrients from the soil, taking water. They protect plants from pathogens, and plants use epigenetic mechanisms to recruit these microorganisms. For example, here we've got what we call an epimutant plant. This plant genetically is identical to your normal soybean, but we have altered the ability that the plant has to maintain those epigenetic mechanisms. What we find is that those epimutant plants cannot control their soil microbiome. They lose control of them. So they are less beneficial microbes in their soil and more pathogenic microbes in the soil. And we want to study how plants do that through epigenetic mechanisms, and that's part of my research here at UK. This is a field of study that is literally exploding at the moment. There is a huge amount of research being produced at the moment, and it's probably in the last 10 years it's really started to acquire momentum, and we're starting to understand the importance of it. We have got very, previous to be here, I was working in Australia, at the University of Adelaide in South Australia. There, the wine industry is a very important industry, and they were really, really excited about this, and we have received that same kind of attention here, because what we think we can do is that if you want to plant a new vineyard, there is a key year where things can go really wrong. It's when you put the new plants in the soil. You just need a little bit of a drought to lose a whole vineyard, and this is a huge investment for producers. If we are able to create plants that can maintain epigenetic memory of stress and can respond better to stress, even just for a couple of years, that will save a huge amount of money for the industry, not only from the point of view of buying new propagules, but also investing in electricity, water to maintain that vineyard alive. Well, the resources that we have at UK are probably within the best in the world. We have really good facilities here, and you've got also something that is important, a climate that allows you to grow many different crops. So that is really important. We don't have to worry about, is it going to be too cold this summer for grapevines to grow? Are we going to have a shortage of water because it hasn't rained? So it's not only the facilities, but it's Kentucky itself. It is funny, my family has been associated to the wine industry back in Spain for centuries. And when I studied botany back in Spain, and I never thought that I was going to study grapevines. And here I am, turning 40-something, and studying grapevines, kind of going back to my roots and what my family has done for many, many years back in Spain.